Okay, yeah, that worked. Stress. Stress is great. And I will tell you why. Let's be honest, we're all stressed, right? Pretty much all the time. Living is stressful, working is stressful, studying is definitely stressful, and even having fun can be stressful sometimes. So I feel like most of us want to feel less stressed most of the time, right? So would you ever wish you were more stressed than you are right now? I'm going to guess no. But there's a couple of questions that emerge from this, because our school system, for example, it relies a lot on having kids being stressed so they study, right? But should we try to remove all stress from our lives, or should we try to lower it to the lowest possible? Or should we just embrace it and live knowing that stress is just a part of it and there's nothing we can do about it? More to the point of this video, is stress ever good? Is it ever just terrible? In this video, I will try to answer some of those questions and also enlighten you on what is stress according to what we currently know in psychology. I know that the title sounds super counterintuitive, but I will promise to try and make some kind of sense here. And I will also share some of the strategies that I use in my day-to-day life to try and reduce my stress or try to deal with it rather than remove it. As you're probably well aware, stress can be very difficult to manage and it can be very uncomfortable. So before we start the video, I'd like to just say that if you struggle with stress and you're having a hard time, there's no substitute for seeking therapy and talking to a psychologist. Okay, so let's start. Hello friends and family, I go by Kappa around here. As you may or may not know, I'm currently in my third year in university studying psychology. I was also diagnosed with ADHD and an anxiety disorder, so I always try to keep up to date with the literature regarding those fields. And some of the stuff that I find and some of the things that I study, I think it's very interesting to bring here to the channel. That's why I started this series. If you feel like that's something that interests you, please consider subscribing. Alright, so moving on to the video. First up, what is stress in the first place? In physics, stress is defined as the force per unit area within materials that arises from externally applied forces, uneven heating, or permanent deformation, and that permits an accurate description and prediction of elastic, plastic, and fluid behavior. So what does that mean? Basically, it means that stress equals essentially to pressure. And in psychology, it's actually not that different. We define stress in psychology as the response that the body has to physical, mental, or emotional pressure. Stress can also cause chemical changes in the body that can raise blood pressure, heart rate, and blood sugar levels. It can also lead to feelings of frustration, anxiety, anger, or depression. So stress is kind of a big deal, and it's sort of a root of all things. It's very hard to manage stress because it's part of our nature, but more on that later. There's a very famous neuroscientist called Antonio Damasio. He wrote a very popular book called Descartes' Error, and more recently, The Strange Order of Things. In the second one, he talks a lot about the state that the body goes into called homeostasis. Homeostasis is basically the state of balance, if you will. It's when your body has everything that it needs in the right levels. So it's what we aim to achieve with everything that we look for. When we eat, when we sleep, when we look for certain conditions like temperature, we're trying to achieve like this balance that is defined as the homeostasis. And homeostasis dictates a lot of the things that we do, and more importantly, it dictates most of the things that we feel. So why am I telling you all of this? Well, because one way to look at stress is basically anything that pulls you away from that state of balance, from the homeostasis. All sorts of stimuli can trigger stress, and it's very important to understand that the emergence and prevalence of stress are essentially dictated by the relationship between the body and the environment you're in. So if we're talking about a dog or a cat or a zebra or a tiger, the trigger that pulls them away from homeostasis is all that stress is. For us though, it's a little bit different. When I say us, I mean humans and also some other primates. In our case, stress also includes when we feel we are about to be pulled out from that state of balance. So we basically get stressed by anticipation. The important thing to take away from this is that if you take a dog, for example, a dog can be very nervous when it's about to enter the vet, if he doesn't like going to the vet, for example. But it works in a different way. Like a dog will get nervous because two stimuli got associated with each other. So going to the vet represents an unpleasant experience, and being near the vet is associated with that. That's why he gets nervous right before he gets to the vet. In our case, it's not just about associating one thing with another. It also includes the possibility of maybe may be getting into danger by something we're not sure about. We don't have to live an unpleasant experience to associate it with something we fear. We sort of calculate what are the things we like and we don't like based on what we lived before, but also by our personalities, by where we are, and by a lot of conditions. The thing about this, and the thing about being able to think we are almost stressed or we are about to be pulled from the homeostasis, is that most of the time in our lives we feel like we are on that threshold, and it's very common for us to feel stressed during most of our day-to-day lives. Our way of living sort of just changed like that, and we came from having to struggle every day to just survive to having a stable home from birth to death, and that's a very drastic change that just happened very fast, and our brains and the way we're wired can't keep up with all of those changes. If you see something dangerous and you have to run away, it makes sense that your blood pressure rises so you can run away faster and faster. But if you raise your blood pressure for 30 years because you have a corporate job or because your rent is expensive, then your heart and your body will have a hard time dealing with that. So when it comes down to it, psychological stress is almost always bad. To be precise, the only kind of stress we consider to be positive is the one that is similar to the one that other animals feel, which is the one that lasts from seconds to minutes at best. And this actually brings us to a very important question, which is, when is stress actually good? Well, as a rule of thumb, stress is good when it is brief, controlled, and engaging. There's a reason why we pay to ride roller coasters and why they always include that nightmarish ride up the hill before falling down into oblivion. There's a reason why horror films are popular with the general public as well. Think about it. Why would anyone want to feel afraid? The truth is that we actually like to feel stressed only in the right measure and only when we can control when and how we feel it. Because we do like being in control, and our bodies actually enjoy the rush we get from the stressful situations that we put ourselves in. And with this, obviously, I mean going to a horror movie or riding a roller coaster or going on a date. Also, when we feel extreme stress from a controlled environment, there is a huge relief that happens afterwards. Feeling a bit stressed in the company of other people can also be quite relieving. When we watch a movie and we watch it together, we feel connected and safer, or we fall into oblivion together, or we get jump scared together and we laugh about it afterwards. But stress is more than just a feeling of fear, obviously. If you're studying, for example, maintaining healthy levels of stress can be actually beneficial for your learning. If you're slightly worried about remembering what you're reading, then you'll probably remember it more, but not if that's all you're thinking about while reading it. If you're an athlete, the right level of stress can make you perform much better. If you get a rush from the stress, it can get you to perform beyond your physical peak for a few seconds. Except if you get so stressed that you can't perform at all. The problem is always the same. We can't level stress whenever we want to the level that we want it to. Now, let's talk about our brains for a minute. When we're overly stressed, the action of glucocorticoids in our amygdala make it so the memory of what we're living is increasingly associated with fear. This means that stress will constantly make us create more and more fears if the level is above the threshold. If you're constantly stressed, your body doesn't differentiate between the stress you've been accumulating and the one related to the thing you're doing right now. Okay, great. So we know what stress is, we know what it isn't, and we know that it mostly sucks and there's not much we can do about it, right? What can we do about it then? Well, first, remember the reason you feel stressed in the first place. Stress engages you to whatever you're doing. If you keep doing something and your stress levels doing the thing are always healthy, your tolerance to that activity will rise and your stress levels will probably remain the same. So one of the best ways to keep yourself motivated is to learn where that threshold is and maintaining your stress at that level so you're always engaged in what you're doing. And second, at the same time where yes, you will feel stress during your life and that's inevitable to a certain degree, it's also possible to learn how to manage that stress and how to know when you should be pushing yourself through things. The easiest way to reduce stress is obviously just not to do things, but that's also very dangerous because you'll be inhibiting yourself from doing a lot of the things that you could be enjoying a lot. Hey guys, it's me editing. Good morning. So, I also wanted to mention that if you keep reducing the things that you do because of your stress, you'll only feel more and more stress as you get accustomed to accommodating to that level of stress you have. So basically, if you keep restraining your activities based on how stressed you feel, you'll just do less and less things and feel more and more stressed. So it's not just about the things that you'll stop doing because of the threshold. That threshold will actually lower like a lot. Anyway, so back to the video. Again, therapy helps a lot with understanding the things that makes you uncomfortable and understand where your boundaries are. And as a kind of a honorable mention, I wanted to say that meditation has also shown to be an incredible way to manage stress. Implementing a meditation routine is a great way to think about what you are feeling and evaluate if your stress isn't constantly on threshold. If you can't meditate or just don't like to, that's okay. I actually meditate by putting on a song and closing my eyes and just focusing on my breathing and on the sounds from the song, and I feel like it helps a lot. I know that it's not the traditional way to put your mind at a blank, but it really works for me, so if you want to give that a try. Now, let's talk about traumas for a little bit. When you have a fear of something that is recurring and referring to the same thing, it's not going to go away just because you wait for it to. That just doesn't happen. In psychology, we learned that to extinguish a fear, it's about associating the fear that you have with safety. For me, it always comes back to that story about the kid who wants to learn how to swim, but he's very afraid to. So his dad throws him in the pool. Premise is that if he lives that situation and he sees that he can do it, then he won't be afraid of it anymore, and he'll know that he can jump in a pool whenever he wants to. But that's not really how we work. If you're mortified of water and someone throws you in a pool, 99% of time, you'll just become traumatized and never want to swim again as soon as you're able to. The right way to go about things would be, if you're mortified of water, but you really want to learn how to swim, and you know your dad is right next to you if you need help. If you jump in the pool by your own initiative, then you'll learn that it was a safe situation, and that's how you'll never be afraid of swimming again. I know that it doesn't sound all that useful, but part of fighting stress is just knowing what it is and looking for it in your life. That goes for the bad things, but it also goes for the good ones. Stress and the anxiety we feel because of it is what dictates what we find exciting and what we pursue with our lives. Finding what things stress you in a good way is one of the most fun things you can do, period. We constantly look for things that challenge us and things that make us feel kind of stressed or just stressed enough. Stress is also the rush that you get from a new relationship or from a new job or from a promotion that you really want to get, or when given a presentation or competing on something or doing physical activities. But I do know that stress can also, and a lot of the time, be dangerous. And our evolution didn't help us live with the environment that we're surrounded with. And that might be the reason why it's kind of hard to accept a title like stress is great, even though it moves us every day without us noticing it. But as psychology evolves and as we understand why we're wired the way we're wired, I think we'll learn more and more useful things and ultimately be better at working with what we have. Alright guys, so thank you once again for tuning in for the video. I hope I didn't bore you with too much sciencey stuff. Most of the things that you saw in this video are based on a book by Robert Sapolsky called Behave and The Strange Order of Things by Antonio Damasio. If you want to check out those books, I'll leave links in the description. Okay, so I'll see you guys next week, or you can just click this video right here if you want to meet me there. Alright, bye guys.